Welcome back to the I Empower podcast, season 2, where we hear inspirational stories and then we turn that into art that reminds us to be great. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. But it doesn't stop there. All of the inspiration is then memorialized into a single unique painting that reminds us to be great. So if you, my friend, are looking to step out of your own way and into your life's full and well-deserved potential, this is the place for you.
It's amazing what happens when we slow down and give the nervous system a chance to process each moment without blasting through your day and then there's no real processing happening, right?
Welcome to the show, Cassandra. I'm so excited to have you on today. I actually found you on Instagram through some of your incredible posts. And I was like, I have to know her. Like, I need to know her story. I want to share it. I think you guys are going to be really excited about what she has to say. So please introduce yourself.
Woo, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to get your DM. I loved reading it. I loved your whole approach to kind of sharing information about trauma with your community and your art and everything. I'm just so excited to be able to I'm going a little bit faster here, but I cannot wait to auction
You're good.
your painting for
Oh my gosh,
my
yes.
fundraising purpose.
You tell me about that.
Yeah,
You have so you're doing yeah, let's jump right into that. So like that was one of the first things you said to me. You're like, "Oh my gosh, I can auction this painting off for your event." So, yeah, I want to know about that too.
yes, thank you. So I'm a functional trauma therapist, and all that means is I have a background in as a therapist in multidisciplinary, as a multidisciplinary, practitioner. So anything from somatic experiencing, fascial stretch therapy, trauma releasing through the body. I'm a holistic nutritionist. That was my first training. NLP coach, hypnotherapy, and then I bring in the trauma informed approach to healing the gut brain connection. So, what I've noticed both within my own healing journey from trauma and also working throughout the years as a holistic practitioner is people who experienced early childhood trauma or a myriad of different types of traumas. They tend to, depending on their genetics, and their lifestyle, they tend to develop pathologies. They tend to get really sick, and it can be autoimmune diseases or mental illnesses partnered with a lot of GI discomfort, gas, bloating, constipation, loose stool, just chronic food intolerances. So, what I was doing as a nutritionist originally was medical diets to help people in their recovery from chronic infections. And what I found was people were relapsing. They would resolve and then they would relapse. And reading all the forums and really understanding people with chronic IBS and trauma is until we rewire the nervous system, until we address the specific trauma responses, we can't expect the gut to heal. We can't expect the supplements that we're using to take effect because we're not entering our parasympathetic state enough to allow our body to actually heal itself. So my work is very complex and comprehensive, and I really am just super dedicated to helping people understand why they got so sick, what's happening to their nervous system, and the control and opportunity they have within themselves to repair and reprogram the body, basically.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So you're saying essentially, so you deal mainly with trauma victims having issues health-wise?
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, so I talk to people who help trauma victims often, and everyone always goes back to this: the body holds trauma.
Mm,
And I just think it's like so interesting because not until recently have I even heard that that was a thing. And so wow. So how does that work? Like, tell me, because when you say this to people, they're like, "What? That's not the reason why I'm sick." Like,
yeah.
it's got to be this or that. But a lot of people are saying, a lot of specialists say, people that are very knowledgeable in this type of work say that, healing that trauma is kind of where it starts, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was watching some interviews on a summit for functionally healing trauma and chronically ill people. Chronically ill folks and trauma victims go often hand in hand. And it was a doctor, a Harvard PhD, who is at the forefront of the research in healing trauma in chronically ill people. And she was saying, we work on the very specific trauma responses. So when somebody mounts an upregulation, so their heart rate elevates, their breathing increases and moves to the chest, their adrenaline goes up, their cortisol goes up from a trigger. That might be from a smell, that might be from a word that somebody used or a tone of voice, or seeing a picture or a movie or a song that reminds them of the original trauma. That upregulates a physiological response, prepping the body for threat again, possible threat. And this is something that is genius. It's been built into our DNA over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to remember the scenarios that might be risky for us and could lead to death. So our bodies are incredibly wise. It remembers anything and everything that could possibly put us in a threatening position again. And it mounts these trauma responses, which gets a really bad rap. It's actually a really good thing, but it's unwarranted in most cases. So we don't necessarily need to nurture those pathways or allow them to just come in and out as they please, because it's wreaking havoc on our bodies. So healing the somatic side of trauma is really brave. It's difficult, and it might take a lot of trauma victims quite some time to feel safe enough to go in their bodies and start to explore what these powerful energy centers are that are holding information about the trauma, and teaching them to meet it and shake hands with it and hold it and learn from it and allow it to feel safe, because you're letting it know you've got this, right? And another way of putting it is reparenting ourselves. We learn to show up for our dysregulations acutely throughout the day in the way that we wish we had been shown up for as we were growing up, right? So it's
Wow.
complex.
It's so yeah, but it's amazing how the body works, because essentially you're saying that these traumatic like immune responses are self-defense
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And the most amazing,
So how do you
go ahead, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No?
I was just curious, so like how do you deal with the trauma? Like how do you fix this? Like what's your advice um on that?
Yeah. So it is very much a top down and a bottom up approach, in the sense that we are taking an inventory of the thought patterns and the belief systems and the language that we're using, the level of self compassion or empathy that we have both for ourselves and our communities. That's really important, because if this isn't tamed, if this isn't tended to, like our beautiful garden that it is, it's going to be sending efferent signaling back down to the body. That's basically going to keep the body in a state of fight or flight. So we want to do some cleanup, some inventory, and some reprogramming from the top down. But then we also want to look from the bottom up. So we have to look at the things that might be mounting an immune response or a stress response that live in the body. So that's things like toxicities, environmental toxins and chemicals, infections. We talked a little bit about breast implants and how breast implants can cause a consistent trauma response within the body. The body is already hypervigilant and already intolerant to invaders, because it feels it needs to protect itself quite a lot, because of our traumatic experiences. And then we layer in an implant. Now, it doesn't have to be just breast implants, it can be an implant of any kind. Screws, metal plates, butt implants, doesn't matter what it is. For some people, that's enough to trigger a trauma response. So we've got to clean it all up and reprogram, basically.
Wow. Yeah, I was gonna ask you. So, because you don't hear a lot about people suffering from breast implants illness, and when you said that pretty much any kind of foreign body that you put into you could run that risk of the body rejecting it and starting other issues. So that's interesting to me that you're saying too. Any kind of I mean, not prosthetics, but, like any kind of mechanical device that you put inside your body
Exactly.
if you're not healed, like, internally that your body can reject that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And it's a
that is
spectrum. Like
interesting.
some people will have piercings that will try and push themselves out, or tattoos that mount
Yeah.
a pretty, right? I had a piercing up here. I used to love this one. And it
Yeah.
pushed itself out. My body rejected a lot of piercings over the years. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard of tattoo rejections too. That's
have you really? I
interesting.
haven't heard of
Oh
that.
my god. I have, like, just the I mean, it's still kind of there, but, like, it just, like, pushed a lot of it out, so it's not it's not good like it was, but that's I just assumed it was, like, an ink like, just rejected the ink, but that's interesting. Wow!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm learning so much.
Oh, good.
Ah, so what made you like, what inspired you to take on this type of work? Like, where is that
Um,
coming from?
yeah, I have to say, I came out of the womb as a coach. Like looking back on my childhood,
Yeah.
I have always been like very passionate about the environment, about sustainability, about living a really healthy lifestyle. For some reason, I've just always been into it. And fortunately and unfortunately, I come from a really long line of traumatized women. And, I think it was around 8 to 9 years old that I have memories of things getting pretty traumatic. And it got worse and worse and worse over the years. And my body just shut down. I got really sick, really depressed. I was using drugs and alcohol to manage my ups and downs, and I was just a loose cannon. And I honestly felt like I was going to die. I could barely get out of bed. I was so inflamed. I was suicidal, and just crying on the floor, begging for a bowel movement, like just so inflamed. And that began my journey of research and getting qualified, like doing all of my trainings, which was really difficult because, as a lot of trauma victims know, you get brain fog and you have peaks and valleys, and it's hard to be consistent in school and find the funds to do it. And I honestly felt like I crawled out of a hole. And I'm just now at almost 40 seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes a lot of work. Um, and I lost my mother due to mental health and addiction and trauma, and my sister as well. And my dedication and passion to helping people climb out of their own holes is like nothing else. There's nothing that motivates me like helping people who have fallen through the cracks and who don't have answers and who are so hopeless but haven't given up, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's so incredible that you took an unfortunate situation and have created this your new life. I think it's amazing what you're doing and helping people. Ah, so amazing. Oh my gosh. So and you've experienced with yourself illness with breast implants. And I think I saw on your Instagram not long ago that you just celebrated your 1 year
I
explant anniversary.
did. I did. It's amazing. It's
What made you just so you were having chronic issues and then you just decided that this was something that you needed to handle?
Yeah, so I got my implants when I was 22, and, about a year or 2 into it, I got an encapsulated contracture, and I had these really sharp corners, around my implants. I could feel these corners. And I was a bodybuilder at the time. I was doing fitness competitions, and you could see the bag and you could see the deformation. And I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't sleep on my belly. I couldn't raise my arms overhead, and I was sleeping so much. My boyfriend was like, "You're depressed. Like, you need therapy. Like, what is going on?" And I just
Yeah.
had no energy to deal with life. So I went back to my surgeon, and he was like, "Sometimes this happens, and we go in and we just basically clean out the scar tissue." And that happened 3 times before I finally went to a physician that specializes in breast implant illness. And he diagnosed me with BII, and it was covered by Canadian healthcare. It was covered by OHIP.
Yeah.
And I was so shocked that it was covered. And he was like, "Yeah, this is a diagnosable disease, and you fit all of the markers. And when we take them out, you should start to feel improvements right away. And you'll see over the few months after explant, like different things falling away." And it was about 2 weeks after the explant that I started to notice some shifts, and they were pretty big shifts. It was quite profound what was happening to my body. The best way I can describe it is it felt like somebody had pulled the biggest splinter out of my body after 20 years, and it felt
Wow.
relief.
Oh my gosh. That's gotta like I can't even imagine how like a weight that weight was just like lifted off of you.
Literally.
Do you oh my gosh. I want to thank you so much for like sharing that story with me because I think it's an important one that people hear. Um so I've got a lot of like, weirdness about myself personally with cosmetic procedures. I'm glad that I'm talking to you because I know like after my last baby, I told my husband I was like I'm going to get me implants because, after you've nursed, this is my second child, so after nursing my first child and then nursing my second child, I was like I'm going to do something for me. And I even looked into like I know they have a lot of different procedures now. They have the actual implant. They've got like where they take fat and put it in different places, and then they do something with plasma where they spin it. And I don't know. Like I did some serious like looking into it, and then like I made the decision because I have daughters. Like after the baby had gotten here, and like I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking I'm like like I'm such a big advocate in doing whatever makes you feel good. So I'm not like shaming anybody that makes the decision to have cosmetic procedures done because I feel like that's a personal decision. And if that's something that makes you feel good, like go for it. But for me, I was like, I don't want my children to see me do something like this because then I feel like that puts a pressure on them. Well, if mom doesn't like her body, then I'm not supposed to like my body either. So, like, I've been battling with that. Did you get the implants because you were lifting and that was kind of like a cosmetic thing for you to compete better?
It's so funny that you bring this up. I love having the opportunity to speak about this publicly because it's actually the first time I'm going to share the real reason why I got them.
Oh gosh, I feel so honored. Thank you.
Thank you for asking, because it's a great opportunity for women who have breast shame to really question the shame, because I grew up, you know, trigger warning to people who are listening. Um, I witnessed my mother in a lot of really disempowered, vulnerable, really sad scenarios. And one of them, I remember she had just been really abused. And I went to console her and sit with her, and her clothes had been torn, and it was so dehumanizing, and her breasts were out. And I hated her breasts. I hated them. I hated her in that moment. I hated how weak she felt to me. I hated that I was in that situation. And it's something that just stuck in my mind, that as I hit puberty and I started to develop breasts that look like hers, I didn't want to look like her. I didn't want anything to do with her. And that's partly why, and I've come a long way from that. I honor her now, it's so deeply. But that's partly why I was bodybuilding too, because she was overweight and an alcoholic and, very mentally ill. And I just wanted to be as far away from that as possible. And I had body dysmorphia and I put my body through the ringer because of it, thinking I was doing healthy things and good things for myself.
Yeah.
But ultimately, looking back, I have so much compassion for young Cassandra who was just trying to get away from the pain,
Yeah. Oh my
you
goodness.
know? So when I got the implants, I actually realized they look exactly the same as hers, just bigger. So I wasn't escaping anything.
Oh my goodness.
You know?
Your body's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way, Cassandra.
It doesn't work that way. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
didn't know. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
So what's your advice, having experienced, are you an advocate for, implants of any sort, or just because of, I know that there's a lot. I honestly feel like there should be some sort of like therapy that goes in with people that go and fix their bodies, just because, like, I don't know, because like you think about people that go in and get weight loss surgery. I want to say that they have to, like, I feel like I've seen where they, and that might not even be true.
Yeah,
Excuse me. So I'm just wondering, like, how beneficial it would be if, people were able to talk to people before going into these procedures, because it can do a lot of damage potentially.
yeah.
And then there's some people that go their whole life and don't have any problems. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I had my surgeon, my explant surgeon, may he rest in peace. He passed away maybe 2 months after he did my explant surgery, just suddenly. And he was amazing. His name was Dr. Gay. He was from Quebec, and he basically led the on block explant kind of world in Canada or in Toronto for about 20 years. And he stumbled upon it accidentally because he was really just trying to help people who had cancer and were getting these rejections of the implants. He was trying to help them and began all of this studying and looking into the etiology of breast implant illness. And he said at the end of the day, there's no conclusive evidence as to what breast implant illness is and why it happens. But he said, I will note one thing that I've noticed over the years, this is a personal opinion, is it's the high anxiety type. And what I took from that as a functional practitioner is when you look at the literature, when you look at the research, there's a ton of research to support that when the vagus nerve has atrophy due to chronic stress, your immune system becomes dysregulated because the vagus nerve is what controls basically all of our visceral organ function. So you have an atrophied vagus nerve that controls your parasympathetic or your rest and digest state. That basically it's like driving a sports car without a brake pedal, right? You're just and things are going to redline. It's going to get
Yeah.
hot. It's going to get inflamed, right? And of course, if you put something on something that has that amount of upregulated energy, it's going to try and push it out, push it off. It's like intolerant, right? So I think one of the best things that people can do is assess their levels of anxiety, assess their levels of like the antagonistic side of the nervous system. So, can you sleep okay? Do you have heart palpitations? How's your digestion? Do you have anxiety? Do you have social anxiety? All of these things are going to be biofeedback as to your body's tolerance for foreign invaders, basically. So if you're looking to avoid breast implant illness, but you want, because I share the same sentiments as you, like fill your boots. If it brings you joy and it results in harm, that's nobody's business. That's up to you to move through and decide that, you know, that was best for you, right? So you go in with the best intentions, do your due diligence, work on gut health, work on inflammation, and make sure that you're maintaining good gut liver function, and you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet, et cetera, post implants, because there are ways to mitigate or minimize how much breast implant illness can derail us.
That makes so much sense. So basically, like when you go to make a decision to have any kind of procedure like this done, you just need to like take a step back and analyze your own health before you go and do something like this so that you don't cause issues later in life.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, like you're saying, then you have the foundation for a successful procedure, a successful life post procedure
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. Yeah. We want it
that's
all. We
incredible.
want it all.
Yeah.
Have our choices and have our health too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Wow. And so I know you mentioned healing the gut. Like that's something that I've said before on the podcast. I have a little bit of chiropractic um, experience because I worked for chiropractors, and one of their main things was always talking about making sure that the gut was healthy. And that's probably one things that a lot of people don't understand it, or they don't know how to do it. So is that and that starts with good nutrition, right?
You know, it does. It does. I'd say that we have been duped into thinking that we don't know how to restore good gut health. It's ingrained in our DNA. It's encoded in our DNA to know how to eat and how to manage our bodies, right? But we've been inundated with choice, and a lot of people choose emotional eating, let's say, or emotional drinking, emotional drug use, and it's warranted. We're stressed and we're under resourced as a society, so I think to keep it simple and to make it more digestible for people who are looking to start healing their gut, think about the habits that we might have had 200 years ago and beyond. We'd be drinking fresh mineralized water from spring water. We'd be eating organic local foods. We'd be eating with our families or in our communities in a peaceful state, right? We'd be doing what we love, but then returning home to rest. And there was good work life balance, unless you were a farmer. But
Right.
it's fresh air, sunlight, good food, food that's local, rich from the ground, those probiotics, those minerals, those phytonutrients. I have an amazing mentor that I work with at Metabolic Solutions, Brendan Vemier, and he says 90% of people with chronic illness have a lifestyle issue. It's not a bug issue or an infection issue. It's
Mm,
actually lifestyle. So sometimes we have to bite the bullet. We have to really just say, okay, yeah, I love my gluten and dairy and my Starbucks frappiato and this and that and this and that. Fair. Nobody's going to take it away from you.
yeah.
But you have to decide at what point you want to take a really good look at your lifestyle choices to allow your body to just fall back into place. You don't have to hustle that hard for it in most cases. It's just a
Yeah.
realignment thing.
So, you mentioned thinking of eating like our ancestors did. So, are you like what kind of diet do you even give your diet a label? Because you hear vegan, vegetarian. Was is it paleo is one? There's so many diets. Or do you just recommend starting out and regulating the things that are manageable now, and then making that your long term goal?
Yeah, I think I always meet my clients where they're at. So if they love eating certain foods, I'm not in the school of thought of like restriction. I'm more about let's focus on the foods that you absolutely love, and if they're highly processed and possibly really pro-inflammatory, let's look at subbing it out for something that's more healthy. So we might go from like a glutinous pasta to a beautiful, quinoa pasta instead. Really simple shifts
Mm.
just to like it's like harm reduction. It's not about only eating salad and carrots and eggs and chicken. It's like
Yeah.
eat what you love, but let's do some harm reduction and be a little bit strategic. And I don't believe that there's any one diet. I think the number one thing that I would suggest to people if it's available to you and your finances, is to really focus on organic, solely because glyphosate is an antimicrobial. So our gut is just chock full with different microbes and even parasites and viruses and yeasts. And that's a really healthy thing. We need those antagonistic microbes in our gut to balance and regulate our immune system and our digestion. So it's not about, we don't want to kill those guys off. So when you're eating non organic food, and foods with lots of preservatives, what the preservatives are actually antimicrobials. So it's killing off our beneficial bacteria.
Mm. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, our bacteria is what creates our neurotransmitters for our brain. So if we're having mental illness issues and inflammation issues, I mean, simple stuff is just to start with eating whole foods that are organic if possible.
Yeah, there's that. I think I know not long ago. I don't know if anyone feels the same way now, and there may be some people that feel that way. But there used to be this whole like they didn't feel like organic was any better than regular. It was just like a sales type of like conspiracy to just and but realistically, like even myself when I shop organic, it's not that much more expensive than buying non-organic. And then like you said, even trying to find local farmers, maybe a farmer's market and things like that. You're supporting local as well as eating better,
Yeah,
especially if it's organic.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much narrative out there, right? There's so many theories and philosophies on different things. And, I always question who's starting these conversations or who's saying these things. Is it the competition, Um,
Mhm.
I think we can see that Mother Nature really doesn't love trying to be replicated or messed with. There's a force
Yeah.
within our planet that nobody can figure out. You try and split the atom and look what happens, right? Like there's so much information in our food and in each cell and in each bacteria that's on the food. And we're just scratching the surface and understanding it. So when you start bringing lots of chemicals into an organic environment, and we see things like the taste change of the vegetable, or the vegetable doesn't really putrefy or go rotten. Um, these are things that make me nervous. It's like, uh,
Yeah.
what? Like,
I'm putting that in my body.
yeah, why doesn't this apple taste like anything? Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh, yeah.
it's hard to say. Um,
Oh, I think I seen one of those, like, posts, back in the day, where it was, like, someone set out, like, a McDonald's hamburger for like, did this, like, science project, and it, like, it didn't mold or anything like that, and, like, bugs weren't even wanting it, so
exactly.
I think, one of the things too that a lot of people struggle with is, feeling like eating fresh takes so much more time to eat fresh as opposed to buying I don't think they're called TV dinners anymore, but like the frozen foods that you just, stick in the oven type thing. But, um, we've tried to start eating fresher, and it doesn't take that much longer. I don't even know, sometimes it's less time when you're cooking fresh vegetables, like, you saute
Mhm.
them and
Yeah.
bake them, and they're good, so
Yeah, yeah. I think with my nutrition clients, when we're looking at really overhauling the relationship that people have with their kitchen and the food that they're buying and prepping, um, there's so much to consider with that, right? Like when there's resistance to switching to whole foods, it's not about logic. I find it has a lot more to do with why people use certain coping mechanisms throughout their day to serve kind of their highest priorities. And they might not be conscious of what those are, and that's fair. But um, let's say somebody's been sexually assaulted, or has been physically abused, their body isn't actually a safe place to be. They might want to disappear. They might not want to switch to whole foods because that's going to make them be more attractive, be more noticeable. They
Mm.
might choose to stay in that world as a blanket, to stay invisible. And that's fair. We have to meet people where they are. There's a myriad of reasons why people want to choose eating more processed, quick foods. Time is one of them. And, I think what we've all learned through COVID also is that we needed time to slow down. We needed time,
Yes.
right? To be human. We live in a very patriarchal model of society where we're expected to answer emails right away, work 7 days a week, answer texts right away, always do the things. And I've gotten really comfortable in my boundaries because there will be none of me if I give all of me. I need to preserve some of this. And some of that means taking the time to go to the farmer's market, to pre wash my veg, to batch prep, or whatever it looks like, so that I'm filling my cup, right? If somebody doesn't value filling their cup, that's a bigger conversation than just strategizing how to cook whole foods, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's like amazing. That's an amazing way to, put that into perspective for us. I know for myself, I did a lot of growing during COVID, and fortunately I've worked from home for years, so that part wasn't as big of a change for me. But just diet wise was a change for me, when we don't have access to going out and getting a restaurant meal or fast food, and learning to cook from home. I find myself now, being like, I think that my home cooked food tastes better than going to this restaurant. And so it made me value food more. And it definitely made me value, like you said, slowing down and, taking time for yourself.
Yeah, because that's medicine in itself. That itself can probably do more benefit than the eating clean does. It's amazing what happens when we slow down and give the nervous system a chance to process each moment without blasting through your day, and then there's no real processing happening, right? We're just like through the
Yeah.
day.
Oh my goodness. Yep. That's definitely um a good way to, to look at that and realize that sometimes we just need to take a step back. And I love that. Um, I do have a few questions that I want to ask you that I like to ask all of my guests. So if you don't mind, we're going to jump right into those. All right. If you could remember, how would you describe your ambitions as a child and how you saw yourself and what you were capable of as a person?
That was so rad. Thank you. I always wanted to be a bodybuilder, a personal trainer, and a nutritionist, always. I used to watch bodybuilding competitions as a kid on TV and just like be in awe of them and practice all my mom's like workout tapes on VHS and tell my friends about the dangers of putting salt on your apple and just
Yeah.
I like I said, I came out of the womb as a coach, so it's really cool to see that like I did that. Like I actually did that. It was crazy.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That is crazy because, like, ask that question often, and no one, I don't think this far has said, like, had that. What I said when I was a kid, I'm doing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild.
I think that's awesome. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, but you are actually in Costa Rica.
Yes.
Are you native to that or did you move
I
there?
moved here. I moved here in February of 2020, 2021. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah, I was living in Toronto. I actually really disliked living in Toronto before the pandemic. But when the pandemic started, I was living alone in the beaches in downtown Toronto. And
Yeah.
I got really depressed. I could not handle being alone, not knowing what was happening with the world, not agreeing with what was happening in
Yeah.
the world. And
Yeah.
I moved home for a few months before I came here, packed all my stuff, moved it in my parents, helped my mom recover from a brutal rib injury, and then I just booked my flight and came. And it's been incredible. It's been
Wow.
like the best decision I could.
Like, you just was like, "I just packed my stuff and I went."
Yeah.
What was appealing? Like, what made you choose Costa Rica?
Really longtime friend of mine from Toronto. She moved here as well. She now lives here and is getting married to Tico and just building her whole life here. And she
Aw.
has this really cool. It's like a really, I wouldn't say it's a retreat center. It's a beautiful home that can sleep 12 people. And she said, "Why don't you come down, spend the month here with me? Let's host a retreat
Yeah.
on how to kind of manage our physiology through the pandemic and see how it goes." And I just never left.
Oh my god, that's amazing. So, like, anybody out there that's ever just been like, I can't, like, worrying about, making that leap, like, she is a prime example of making that leap and, being successful. Like, if you put enough, energy into it and, like, that mindset, um, you can achieve anything. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Facebook groups are very helpful for expats traveling. If you're looking to move somewhere and just search the group and it'll tell you everything from like visas and residency and restrictions and safety and all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing. And so the resources are there, guys.
little Facebook.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So my next question for you is, what would you say has been your stickiest struggle that has stuck with you through your journey? Or
Mm.
do you have one?
Oh my lord, do I ever. Um yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I always thought that I would be completely healed when I went public with my trauma story and really positioning myself as an expert. And the truth is I'm not at all totally healed. I just have more grace and more self-love and patience when I am dealing with symptoms. So I'm diagnosed bipolar. I am medicated. I also have an autoimmune disease that is rooted in chronic inflammation. So it's difficult to manage inflammation in the body. And that will trigger a lot of mental health issues. So, I am on the highest dose of sertraline that you can take. And I use my
Yeah.
every day to help manage my anxiety. um, so it's getting better. It's a process of slowly detoxing, rewiring the nervous system, and also just knowing that like these ups and downs aren't forever. They are here for a period of time. Nobody's immune from them. And it's just about trying to enjoy life as much as I can, even in those really low lows, meaning just laying there and watching the Netflix and not feeling guilty or a
Yeah.
piece of shit because I'm totally offline, like that's really helpful.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you also share that you use medication, because I feel like there's such a stigma around medicated, needing medication for, maintaining your life, basically. And so I think it's awesome that you share that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a fundraiser called the Stigma Effect, and it's all about raising awareness of the medical etiologies behind mental illness diagnoses so that
Yeah.
victims of abuse, patients and their families can start to unravel that really tight knot of judgment around how people choose to treat their mental illnesses. Medication saved my life. And if I were to keep operating from that judgment place, or that pressure from society that holistic practitioners are taking the easy route out, or like selling out basically by taking pharma. And it's like that is a very non-trauma informed approach at looking at how somebody is resourcing themselves to stay alive. KMH the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, they have a really great slogan, quote, which is mental illness at its worst results in death. And that really clicked for me because when people think, okay, if somebody has pancreatitis or diabetes, at its worst, it can result in death, and they take insulin or they get surgery, they, go on chemo, whatever the case is. Medication is necessary to save people when their organs are not functioning optimally. And it's not up to us to say whether one organ is worthy of being supported by medicine versus another because of unwarranted stigmas. It's just, no, no, I do not subscribe to that.
I think that's awesome that you share that though, because yeah, there's such this like weirdness about, taking medication. So I think it's awesome that you share that. And that you also like you said, you take a holistic approach too to life as well when it comes to, diet and things like that. So I think that's what an amazing mesh.
Yeah, yeah, it's turning out really good. I couldn't be happier with how things are going. It started out really rough, but it's all coming together, all coming together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings me to my next question. We like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How do you think of, or how would you describe the power that you have to try and step into every day?
Mhm. I think the power comes from really just loving and believing in human beings and our ability to be more than what we've been told that we are. Like, we're not here to just work and save for our retirement and, watch TV. And if that's what you want to do, fill your boots, no doubt. But I my mother was very much, even though she struggled a lot with mental health and addiction issues, she is very much a humanitarian and an animal rights activist. And she had a really good heart. And that's the stuff that makes me wake up and step into that kind of, I don't want to say confrontational, position in society, but I have no problem calling people on things that I think are trying to disempower me or anybody in my
Right.
community. That power comes from a place in believing in the way human existence is meant to be, which is sovereign and with respect and mutual
Hmm.
respect and joy and collaboration. And, I think we've been led so far away from that because there is a part of us that greed has served a purpose, right? Capitalism and greed has served a purpose before the Industrial Revolution when it was good for us to have this drive to acquire more, but it's running rampant now. And I can see it from a bird's eye point of view. And that motivates me to hit the brakes and talk about these highly stigmatized or avoided conversations because I'm like, guys, hello. Let's remember who we are and what we're capable of, you
Yeah.
know?
I love that because it's like, there's so much more to life. You know, this is the
Yes.
only one that we're guaranteed that we know we have right now in the moment. And, how do you want to spend that?
Yeah, yeah, I wanna spend it like I feel like I'm going out swinging, like
Yeah. Yeah, like, I like I always say that, my biggest goal in life is to just, be remembered for good, like, something, whatever, so, like, I'm constantly just trying to, like, make sure that that's and so I feel like what you're doing what is definitely going in with that as well,
Oh
that's
my god,
amazing.
and ditto, ditto. Your podcast, raising awareness in your art, and being a conscious
Yeah.
mama, we're all doing our magic. Amazing.
Yeah. So, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever been given?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's a good question. I've gotten a lot of really good advice. I would say the piece of advice that sticks out to me the most is you can only expect somebody to treat you as well as they treat themselves. So watch how people treat themselves and don't expect them to show up more for you than they do for them.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's great advice, and that's a hard one too, because we expect, because that kind of like does like a little loop here. Like we expect, how we treat people for them to show up the way that we do, but sometimes that's not, that doesn't work that
They
way.
don't have it in their toolbox, most people.
Yeah.
And then that same person would follow up with, "It's not lonely at the top, it's just less crowded." So his
Yeah.
was just learn how to really fulfill yourself until you find the people that you really resonate with.
I love that.
Yeah.
And my last question, which is my favorite question of all, what is the best piece of advice you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of struggle if you had just a few moments with them?
God, I love that. Wow, what a good question.
It's a deep one.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful. I would let her know no matter what she does, she's loved and it's totally okay. There's nothing that she can do that would make me lose my faith in who she is or her worthiness to be here authentically. Just do
Love
it.
that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, Cassandra, I want to thank you endlessly on behalf of our team and every single person who heard your incredible story and connected with it. After the podcast, I will head straight to my easel to create a piece of art that represents what I personally felt and saw from your amazing story of transformation. Of course, if anyone wants to follow along that process or you're interested in purchasing one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it as a reminder to step into your own power, you can do so on our Instagram. But yes, thank you, Cassandra. Thank you so much for being on. It's been such a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. You're just a ray of light, and I'm really grateful for your mission and what you're
Oh.
doing here. I cannot wait to see the art. I'm so grateful.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want to thank my guests again for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that you can give them a follow. And of course, if you guys felt personally connected to the story and you would like to support the podcast by purchasing one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it, you can do so at my new website. It is iampower.club. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at iampowerclub. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. We will see you then.